Worry kills work. Work kills worry. If we allow worry to grow, it will kill all the hard work that you have put into your health, to your relationship, to your education, to your career, all of those things. Worrying is actually a mental state that's actually created through persistent anxiety or stress about the future events. The benefit behind worry is that it gives us an illusionary sense of control. Today's conversation, I'm really excited about. It's on this area of worry. So for those of you who are aware, self-aware about the overthinking, overanalyzing, well, this is a talk that is really going to serve you. We're going to be giving you instructions, well, understanding about the functions around worry, how it impacts yourself, where is it founded from, and also we're going to go for a deep dive in understanding why this is an issue, and more importantly, how we can overcome worry. Now, before we begin, these segments are really a big part of the high performing warrior, the pursuit to greatness. And the reason why we're talking about worry today is because it's the biggest component, that the greatest blocker when it comes to achieving greatness. Worry is something that I personally had to struggle and deal with for a big part of my journey. I would claim myself as one of a serial warrior, right? And I believe that somehow subconsciously, the high performer warrior or the warrior program came through because it is the opposite end of what worry has allowed me to be. You cannot be a warrior with an A, right? If we stuck in spirals of worrying, you are a warrior, right? With an O. You can't become a warrior at the same time. So I think on a subconscious level, I created this program so that I can go to the extreme ends and take people on that journey, on that extreme end, from going from warrior into warrior, right? I hope I said that right, but I think you get the point. So in this episode, we're taking a deep dive into that. But just before I begin, I want to give you a hack, more so of a mantra. Now, this mantra is going to sum up everything that we are going to be talking about here. This mantra is what helps me get out of the spiral of worrying, okay? And I'm sure it's going to be the same for you. So this mantra is: worry kills work, but work kills worry. I'll say that again. Worry kills work, but work kills worry. So in this episode, we're going to understand what does that mean specifically, right? Like, what work should I be doing in order to kill worry? So we'll go through that in a second. Like how we did last week. If you've got any questions, please post that up on the comments so I can speak into it when you guys are ready. And any questions I'll most likely answer at the end, but if I see it earlier, I'll pause and answer it now. So let's start off with, what is worry? Worrying is actually a mental state that's actually created through persistent anxiety or stress about the future events. Okay. Now, worry, I just want to start off by saying that worrying is a very normal, and sometimes it can be a healthy process to go through. So I'm not really too concerned if people are worrying, right? But it does become an issue when it becomes a chronic worry. Now, chronic worry or chronic illnesses, and depending on who you're speaking to, is anything that lasts for more than 4 weeks to 3 months, so something longer. Now, if we're thinking about financial worries, for example, right? It's probably one of the most common ones. Now, that is, for a lot of people, can fall into chronic worrying. Okay. And we'll go into more details about that in a second. But I want to separate the two. There is worry and there's chronic worry. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge that worrying does have its merits if it's done quickly, right? If it's like, using the methods that we're going to be using today. But when it goes into chronic worry, there is a considerable amount of impact and rippling effects that it happens in that space. So according to neuroscience, some studies that came from neuroscience, when we worry, it activates the amygdala part of our brain. This is the fight, flight, freeze part of our brain, the fear center part of our brain. And it releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, which is great if it's done in a short period of time. But if it's done over a period of weeks, if not months, well, now we've got an issue. There was a research that was done through New York, I was going to say New South Wales, but New York University in 96. And basically, what showed in that study was that chronic worrying, right? So not just normal worrying, but chronic worrying can alter the brain function by reducing or disconnecting the prefrontal cortex. Now, this is a part of our brain that's used for decision making. This is the part of our brain for problem solving. This is part of our brain that's the rational part of our thinking. So imagine this, right? You've got a problem, you go into worry, and then you go into chronic worry, right? In order to fix the problem, but now the part of your brain that can fix the problem is now deactivated, right? We've got less resources in order to be able to find a solution for our problem. So chronic worrying can significantly impact the ability of yourself, the high performer, to achieve any form of greatness in your work, in your relationship, in your health, and so forth, right? But here's the more interesting thing. What they found is that worry does not only disrupt the cognitive processing, it can also cause emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation is a issue. Now, what is emotional dysregulation? It's in the word, right? When you've got a cup or a bottle, right? And your bottle is filled with unprocessed emotions, and often it's all these negative emotions. So when we go into chronic worry, we disable the part of our brain that can probably find solutions for us, and we fill our body with emotions that are dysregulated. But some of the symptoms of emotional dysregulation is having intense emotions, like an overwhelming sense of emotions that are difficult to manage, difficult to control in some stages. It just becomes really overwhelming. Frequent mood swings without any reasons of why you're having these emotions. Prolonged negativity. Now, prolonged negativity, all emotions, both negative and positive emotions, or high vibrational and low vibrational emotions, can be regulated within 90 seconds, except when we go into chronic worrying, right? I mean, you can still regulate the emotions in 90 seconds, but then you're dumping in more emotions. Right. So you're dumping in, regulating, dumping in, regulating. The cycle continues. So which is why it feels like, hey, this 90-second rule on regulating emotions does not work. Well, it does work, but if you keep dumping in more worry, then you're kind of dumping and regulating at the same time. Now, if you still focus on regulating eventually, and the steps that I'm going to show you today, eventually you'll be able to regulate some of it. But with prolonged negativity, right, it now becomes a habit. Like worrying becomes a habit, a dysfunctional habit that a lot of us have learned how to do really, really well. And, I'll put my hand up from that as well. I've learned that habit, definitely from my family, but also from my culture, and also from, past traumas that have happened to me, or I did create a habit that was focused around worry. All right. So another symptoms of emotional dysregulation is difficulties in being emotionally aware. Right. So when we have chronic worry, when we're emotionally dysregulated, we don't even know what we're feeling at times. Right? It's so confusing inside, and then eventually we get to a point where we just feel nothing. Right? We're just emotionally disconnected, where we don't even feel joy, excitement, fulfillment, none of that stuff. So that's the emotional dysregulation. Also impacts our behavior. When we are emotionally dysregulated, we can go into impulsive actions. We can go into self-harm behaviors, right? Aggressive or violent behaviors, difficulties in managing relationships, or even struggles in maintaining a relationship, like friendships or a partner or anything like that. Emotional dysregulation will also cause things like emotional eating, either binge eating or restrictive eating, where we use food to sabotage, right, or self-soothe, or we think we're self-soothing, but it's more so of numbing our emotions, or we just don't eat at all, right? This next one is a really good one, and it's an important one. Perfectionism and controlling behaviors are also part of emotional dysregulation, which is caused, right, often caused by chronic worrying. Perfection, as in setting unclear standards, right, or unrealistic standards, I should say, and becoming distressed when we are unable to meet them. Frequent, guilt and shame, these are all examples of emotional dysregulation. Now, when it comes to the mind, when it comes to the cognitive symptoms of emotional dysregulation, these things include like racing thoughts, where your mind is just bouncing, right? You could even sometimes, when you're talking to someone that has a racing mind, they talk very disorientated, right? They're jumping from one thing to another, right? They're talking very fast in order to get things out, but their mouth is not really catching up with their brain. Now, this is an example of someone with racing thoughts. We've all experienced this, so you know what I'm talking about. The problem with racing thoughts is that it's hard to focus. It's hard to be clear in what you want, what the actual issue is, right? Another issue, another symptoms with emotional dysregulation that is caused by chronic worrying is negative self-talk. I mean, you've already got a problem that, if your worry is true, you've already got a problem that you've got to deal with. And now you're beating up on yourself because of shame and guilt and all this other stuff, and talking bad about yourself, right? And this is my favorite one. This form of thinking that I'm about to talk to you about is my favorite one, is catastrophic thinking, right? This is where you create in your mind. It doesn't happen, and it very rarely happens in the real world, but you've created in your mind that this big worst case possible outcome or situation is going to happen based on this minor issue that has just presented itself, right? So everything that I just spoke about just then, these are all symptoms of emotional dysregulation. When we go into chronic worry, we step into these, we step into emotional dysregulations. We experience all of these symptoms in the space of emotional dysregulation, and we also knock off, right, the prefrontal cortex, where the role of the prefrontal cortex is to, rational thinking, decisiveness, problem solving, the parts of it that we need in order to address this problem, we have now disconnected from it, right? So let me give you an example. Imagine that you've just started a new job, and this job here is probably a higher level than what you've had before. It's a different job. It's at a bigger company, bigger company, new people, right, that you're probably not used to. But you're kind of, before starting this role, you're kind of worried that you may not have the experience or the education to do this job. So that kind of worry is perfectly understandable, and it's perfectly normal because you care, right? You care about this job, you care about your brand, you care about these things. Now, this is a very normal stage where you're worried, can I really do this? Right? Your own imposter syndrome comes up for a little bit. Now, this will be fine if it only lasted a little while, but no, you didn't really do anything. You didn't squash the worry there and then. You just allow the worry to grow. So basically, this worry has been growing, and now you've started this role, right? And now you've gone into the amygdala. Your prefrontal cortex is now knocked off. You can't really make good decisions right now. You're not thinking logically. You're unable to answer questions to things that you already know. You're unable to make basic decisions, even on things that you know how they're going to turn out. You start making mistakes that have nothing to do with your lack of education or experience, right? You have now put yourself in emotional dysregulation. Okay. So not only have you started this new job, your prefrontal cortex is knocked off. You've gone into emotional dysregulation. And let's say for this scenario, we're using perfectionism kicks in, right? And now because perfectionism kicks in, right, you've created these unrealistic expectations for yourself. And because it's unrealistic, and your prefrontal cortex is knocked off and won't and it won't tell you that this is unrealistic expectations, right? You've ended up failing on the expectations, right? Which anyone would have, by the way, right? And so now, because you feel like you're failing at this job, right? But you're not, but it feels like you're failing at this job, right? You can't think clearly, you can't do this clearly. So you've entered into emotional eating. You started to put on these pounds, right? And now your health is now impacted. Okay, you're not even putting the right fuel in for high performance right now, right? You're really putting in fuel in order to, soothe your emotions right now. And because of the food that you're putting in, your mood starts swinging at home, at work. You're now unavailable to your partner, right? And when you have emotional breakdowns, like in your relationships, you have an anger outburst with no logical reason. You might yell at the kids or you might yell at your partner, right? And now your relationship is impacted, right? Your relationship is impacted. During this time, I would like to remind you of the mantra: worry kills work, work kills worry. Okay? If we allow worry to grow, right, it will kill all the hard work that you have put into your health, to your relationship, to your education, to your career, all of those things, right? It will start spreading. Okay? It will start spreading. Let me give you another example. This is an example that I'm pretty sure every single one of you will be able to relate to, right? Actually, yeah, let me go to this other example that all of you might be able to relate to, which is financial worry. Now, financial worry is a very normal thing, right? As a business owner, I can tell you that, I do worry about finances, right? I do worry about, like, can I pay my team? Can I pay my mortgage? It's a very normal and expected worry, whether if you have a business or if you're a career person, whatever it is. But when it turns into chronic worry, your prefrontal cortex is knocked off, you're emotionally regulated, right? You're now yelling at your partner's spending habits, right? Because they don't understand the emotional dysregulation that's happening inside of you, right? And now your relationship is impacted, okay? Now, there's a reason why 40% of divorces are caused by financial problems. Now, out of this 40%, they're not real existing problems. A lot of this is because of financial worry, And so, now that you've got this financial worry, now you've got worries about your relationship, your mind is continuously racing, unable to focus. You're carrying these shames from the past that you're not good enough, not smart enough, don't have enough money, don't have enough, whatever it is, right? And then you create this catastrophic thinking process where you're about to lose your job, where you're about to lose your partner, you won't be able to pay your mortgages, you're going to be homeless, and you have no other choice other than to die if you then become homeless, right? Like these are all the stories of how worry spreads, right? So here's the benefit behind worry, all right? What every single human behavior that we do, whether it's functional or dysfunctional, it is here to really serve it. Like, it serves us in some way, shape, or form. Now, there is a benefit behind worry. The benefit behind worry is that it gives us a illusionary sense of control. Now, we will start worrying in order for us to somehow be prepared for the worst case scenario, right? Now, this part is important. We've sold to ourselves a story that if you were to worry about your financial situation, your kids, your partner, your boss's impression of you, all of these things, right? There is a part of us that believes that if we worry, then we will at least be prepared for what's coming up. Now, the reason why I said to focus on this is that one of the steps on how to beat worry is based on this stuff, right? The illusion of the benefit behind worry. So there is a part of us that believes that we need to be in charge of everything that is happening in the future. And we think that worrying is a tool that can be used in order to be prepared in the future. Now, part of that is true, part of that is true. But once the worry becomes chronic, in other words, it starts impacting your health, your ability to focus, your ability to see reason, your ability to make decisions. When you're feeling stuck, lost, confused in that one place, right? Well, that worry is not serving you in any way. So let's start talking into like how to resolve worry in the first place. And this comes back to the mantra: worry kills work. Work kills worry. If you find yourself in a worrying state, you've got some work to do. You've got some work to do. Now, this work that you'll have to do is either working strategically on the problem or working on your psychology. These are the two things, the two works that you'll have to do. Now, when you're at a worry stage, you personally won't know if it's strategic or if it's psychological. So my suggestion to you, to you, is to do both, right? To do both, right? So let's go into the steps on how to resolve worry, how to get into that worry state. Now, here's the thing: the stuff that I'm going to be mentioning below is going to help with worry, and it will also help with chronic worry. But if you've moved into emotional dysregulation, right, you will need to work on regulating your emotional dysregulation as well. Okay, so that part we are not really going to go into a deep dive in today's conversation. Maybe I can do another talk on that later. But the steps that we're going to be doing here does work on chronic, but you will have to resolve your emotional dysregulation if this chronic has been a very long time. Okay. So step number one, Dale Carnegie. Now, he was a gentleman, I think it was in the 40s or 50s. He wrote a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Now, I would strongly recommend that read. For those of you that read, go read that book or audiobook or whatever works for you. Now, Dale Carnegie, in that book, he emphasizes on the fact that if you're in chronic worried stage, focus on today and what you need to do today. So basically, he calls this live in the day tight compartments. So basically, focus on today and only have thoughts that have to do with this for today, okay? And delete any thoughts that have to do with yesterday or any thoughts that have to do with tomorrow. Now, this is a powerful process that other doctors have used, mindfulness practitioners have used in order to improve the general well-being of the individual. This helps with your ability to focus on what you're doing today and re-sparks that cognitive processing in these areas and reduces your anxiety levels just by focusing on what you have to do today. If it's a problem that's going to happen tomorrow, even if it's like, 12 hours away, no, sorry. You start training your brain in really focusing on what you need to do today. Step two, right, is write down your worry. Now, here's the thing, guys. Like, journaling is such a underrated but powerful tool. Such a powerful tool, right? And if we know how to use it, So if you have something that you're worrying about, like, for example, the example that I gave before, like, not being able to fulfill your role, or financial issues, or relationship issues, or health issues, right? Whatever things that you're worrying about, write it down, right? I am worried about this, and this. The next stage is get the facts. Now, what I like to think about here is, what can I prove in the court of law, right? What can I actually prove in the court of law? Like, what facts do I have? Not saying that this worry thing is ever going to go to court. Who knows? But many cases, it was not going to go to court. But what can I actually prove here? So go get the information that's there. And then once you've got the facts, you've now got to analyze the facts. Okay? You got to analyze the facts. Is it really real? Did you just write things down thinking that you can prove it in the court of law, or is it really real? Okay? And then if it's really real, then make a decision and act upon it. See, the process of writing this out, it gives you a chance for the problem to look back at you, right? So you've got a problem, you wrote it down, you put down the facts, you analyze the facts, all right, and you've got a couple of decisions you need to make. So now the problem is looking back at you. It's no longer running through in your head, where you've got no visual representation other than the stuff that you just created in your head. And there's a very, very high chance that you've created the worst possible outcome in your head. But if you're write it down, getting the facts, right, now you can take the steps that you'll need in order to solve this problem, right? By doing so, again, you're igniting the prefrontal cortex, right? You're regulating the emotions, right? And you're going to go on from there. So that's step number 2. Step number 3, what is your worst case scenario? What is your worst case scenario? And then write that down. And whatever worst case scenario that you wrote down, my partner's going to leave me if I lose the job, right? I'm not going to be able to pay the mortgage, and I'll be homeless, and I'll have to die. Right? Sure, write that down. Okay. And then once you write that down, prove its merits. Prove its merits. If you lose your job, well, what are the chances of that happening? Okay, let's say it's 95%. Let's make that bullshit stuff. Does that really mean that you're going to die? Right? And then as soon as you write that down and it looks back at you, okay, that's not the worst case. That's not, I mean, it is the worst case, but that's not what's really going to happen. Are you really going to be homeless? No, I've got my mom, I've got my brother, I've got my sister, it's not going to happen, right? Okay, it's cool. So then cross that shit out. So what is the actual worst case scenario? Well, losing my job is the worst case scenario. Cool. That is the worst case scenario. So now it's time that you work on accepting the worst case scenario. Not saying that by accepting it's going to come true and you're going to manifest that to happen. But however, you're spending so much time and energy worrying that you're not doing the steps that's required in order to solve the problem. The moment we accept the worst case scenario is going to happen, not going to happen, there's a possibility of it happening, right? It brings down our anxiety. Our anxiety and our fear is at an all-time high because we can't accept the worst case scenario is going to happen. So what we do is flood our system with, stress, fear, sadness, grief, shame. All of this stuff is running through our system because we can't accept the worst case scenario. Now, you might not like the worst case scenario, right? It's a bit like my hairline. I don't like the fact that I don't have hair in my head, but that's got nothing to do with the fact of killing it as a bald guy, right? You've just got to accept that your worst case scenario, right, is a possibility. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. But acceptance really comes in a space of understanding. It really comes in a space of, well, if it's going to happen, it's only going to happen for my benefit. Now, this is powerful. If your mind automatically creates this worst case scenario, and you write it down, and okay, the worst case scenario is just losing my job. Well, if you can accept that it's a possibility, doesn't mean it's going to happen. If it does happen, I'll still be okay. If it does happen, it is going to be for my benefit. If it does happen, I will figure it out. Now, instantly, cortisol drops. You get out of the amygdala. You now have more resources to be able to deal with this problem at hand. You're now in a powerful state, right? So that's step 3. Step 4, keeping busy, right? Now that you wrote this down, now that you've created a strategy, now that you've accepted the worst case scenario, right? Now it's about keeping busy, right? Most of your worst case scenario, most of your worries, they never come true, okay? Some might, but most of the things that you're worrying about never come true, okay? So instead of spending time, money, energy on just sitting there worrying, being emotionally disconnected, right? Go do something, okay? When I find myself in worry spirals, I decide, okay, cool, I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to walk until I've regulated this worry, right? I remember a few times I've done close to about 15,000 steps just by, if I'm going to worry, well, I'm going to move my body while I'm worrying. If I'm going to worry, well, I'm going to clean while I'm worrying, right? If I'm going to worry, I'm not going to sit there, watch TV, right? Or go to bed early in a worry state. I'm going to do something. I'm going to keep busy. See, worrying for most of us is a habit, and we need to break this habit. And in order to break this habit, we need to create new processes to do it. Guys, think about this. Like, I'm pretty sure you've dealt with situations that, were actually real, but you didn't worry too much about it because life was just so busy, right? Now, I'm not a big fan of being busy for busy's sake. But if you find yourself in a state of chronic worry and all you're doing is just sitting there, you're not focusing, your mind is racing, you're thinking about worst case scenario, this is impacting your health, this is impacting your relationship, this is impacting all areas of your life, well, don't just sit there, go do something. Focus on what's really important. Come back to this mantra: worry kills work, but work kills worry. Be active. Go clean the toilet 50 times if you need to, right? Go do 5, 10, 15,000 steps if you need to. Go sign up for a gym. Be active, right? Continuously be active, right? Teach your mind that you're willing to do everything in order to reprogram it. That worrying, chronic worrying, is not something that's serving you, okay? So that's not something that's serving you. Now, number 5, the 5th step in overcoming or beating worry is cultivating a mental attitude that will bring you peace, that will bring you happiness, mental peace and happiness. Now, it is each and every single one of our responsibility to create a mind that's tuned more towards mental peace. My guru calls it peace inside your mind, right? It is our responsibility to find peace inside of our mind, because the factory settings is fear in the mind. It is our responsibility to rewire the mind in order to find peace inside of it. So it's your responsibility to fill your mind with positive thoughts. A great way of filling your mind with positive thoughts is asking the question, what is the benefit out of this? Okay, I've got these financial issues, but what's the benefit out of this? When I was doing that with the last time I was experiencing financial issues, the benefit came is that, well, I've got more time on my hands. I've got more time on my hands that I can spend with the kids, but I wasn't spending with the kids. I was in my head just worrying about financial issues, right? Well, I've got more time in my hands. I can actually spend this time with the kids, because when I start getting busy, I'm not going to be able to spend some time with the kids, right? So now I get to spend some time with the kids, right? Oh, that's a good benefit. Well, I also have more time to create a new program. Cool. That's a benefit, right? Which is going to help with the financial side of things anyway. If I sell these programs, I'll be able to get more money, right? Wow. Okay. What else is the benefit out of this? Well, I can train more. Sweet. Go train more. So a powerful way, right, to create these positive thoughts that come through with, potentially real or made up problems is asking the question, what is the benefit out of this? What is the benefit out of this? Right? And this will train your mind to see the benefit behind every situation. Remember, guys, I truly believe, and I would love for you to adopt this belief system that everything that happens on planet Earth is for my benefit. Now, whether if that's true or not, right? For me, it's that reality. The reason why I've adapted this belief structure is because there was a stage in my life where I only saw nasty things. I only saw bad things. I only saw things that took life and love and joy out of people. Now, seeing that and believing that life just takes out of you, well, that's just the effed up way of living. Right? That's just the heavy way of living. Whereas if you can train your mind to see the benefit behind all of these steps, benefit behind the things that have happened to you, that everything on planet Earth is happening for your benefit, no matter how heavy it feels like to begin with, is happening for your benefit. If you were to create that belief system, there'll be very little things that will hold you down. Also, another important thing in creating a mental attitude of peace inside your mind, stop complaining, stop whinging, stop gossiping. Not everybody needs to know about your problems. By continuously talking about your problems, you're fueling the worry, you're fueling the negative thinking, right? Write it out, create a structure, and go activate, go plan, go execute that structure. And if it doesn't work out, well, cool. You've accepted the worst case scenario anyway, right? You've created structures on if that worst case scenario came through, well, this is what I'm going to do. Excellent. Move on. Okay. So by complaining, by whinging, by, continuously talking about your problem, all you're doing is fueling it. It's totally fine if you need to do that for a little bit. But if you've gone 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 3 months, 3 years talking about your problems, well, all you're doing is just adding fire to it. Okay. So in that space, stop talking about it. What you'll notice that since you're not talking about it, you'll be starving the fire, so that comes down. And now you step into practice gratitude. So when you're practicing gratitude, this is not just about writing 3 lines of I am grateful for air, I am grateful for water, I am grateful for the fact that I can pay petrol. Now, if those things are things that you're really grateful for, that you can feel the gratitude, sure, definitely do that. When you're practicing gratitude, here's the thing. I don't want you to write 3 things or 5 things that you're grateful for each day. Up the ante, right? Write 20 things that you're grateful for each day. Are you telling me that you've experienced 24 hours and you can't find 10 to 20 things that you're grateful for each day? You definitely can if you looked for it. Writing 3 things each day that you're grateful for, it's a beginning, but by the time you get into a gratitude mindset, it might take about, a year before you get there. But if you're writing 20 things that you're grateful for each day, I promise you, by the time you get to 2 or 300, you're going to be grateful. You're going to be a grateful person. But here's the thing about gratitude practices. You don't just write it down. You've got to feel the gratitude that you have for that thing. That's the important part. You've got to feel the gratitude that you have for what you wrote down. Okay. So that's number 5. Cultivate a mental attitude that is attuned towards mental peace or peace in your mind and happiness. Okay, that's number 5. Finally, number 6, and this is my favorite one, meditate. Connect with things that are bigger than you, that are greater than you. Connect to a force that is greater than the problem that you are experiencing. Now, if you believe in God, if you believe in universe, then great. Connect to it. Surrender your problems to that greater force. If you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in a force that's better than you, I'm sure you believe in nature, right? Well, it's hard not to believe in nature because it's fucking right in front of you, right? So if you believe in nature, then go spend time with nature, right? Now that is a force that is much greater than you. So the number 6 is pray. So let's recap on how to beat worry. Number 1, as Dale Carnegie mentions, live in a day-tight compartment. So live in that 24 hours. Number 2, write down your worry. Get the facts. Prove the facts and create the plan. Number 3, accept the worst case scenario and create a plan for it. Now, with the worst case scenario, not everything is going to lead to death. Like, what's real in that worst case scenario? Number 4, keep busy, be active, be productive. Number 5, cultivate a mental attitude that is designed towards peace in your mind. And number 6, pray, meditate, connect to a power that is greater than your own problems. Imagine for a moment if you're using these strategies the next time you experience worry. Imagine that you'll be able to squash worry before it turns chronic. Imagine how much time, money, energy that you'll save by not going into chronic worry, right? What will happen to your relationship? What will happen to your mental health? By overcoming worry, being open to the possibilities that, this problem is going to help you. Your energy is no longer drained by this endless anxiety, but instead you're channeling it into productive work, right? Meaningful relationships. And guys, remember the mantra, worry kills work. What it means by that, all the hard work that you have put in to create the life that you currently have, however you feel about it, right? I'm sure there's many good things that is in your life right now, but I promise you, worry will destroy those things. But on the flip side, work is what's going to kill worry, right? Keeping busy, working on your mental attitude, right? Creating a plan, a strategy on how to get out of it, right? If it's a real problem, well, what's the plan, right? Getting out of the amygdala, going into the prefrontal cortex, or regulating your emotional dysregulation, bringing all of that down. Like that requires work. It's just not going to go away. It requires you to work. And as you're working on those things, as you're working on regulating, as you're working on, getting rid of this stuff, right? Guess what? Worry will go away, right? So as we wrap up today's sessions, guys, I would love for you to remember this mantra, right? Remember these 6 steps, activate these 6 steps, write it down for the next time that you go through worry. And please remember the mantra, worry kills work, work kills worry. And let this be your mantra as you strive towards greatness, guys. If you've got any questions, now's the time to ask. Write it down into comments. Even if you're watching the replay, which looks like most of you guys will be watching this replay, then I'm going to ask you to write in the comments, and I'm going to start. I'll do my best to answer it, or I'll answer it in our next Wednesday's session. But for now, I love you. Take care. Wish you all the very best. Bye for now.